We spend so much time trying to shape the world around us, as if it's a lump of clay waiting for our hands to mold it into something better, something more acceptable. But what if the real transformation happens, not when we exert our will, but when we finally stop? When we let go of the constant need to fix, to perfect, to control. Think about those moments when you've tried so hard to make something happen. Maybe it's your career, where you've set goal after goal, only to find yourself frustrated that the promotions or recognition aren't coming fast enough. Or maybe it's a relationship, where you've bent over backward to please someone, only to feel unappreciated or unseen. There's a subtle but powerful tension that builds when we chase change relentlessly, almost as if the more we want it, the further it slips from our grasp. But what happens if we stop pushing? If we, for a moment, allow things to be exactly as they are? Think of a leaf caught in a stream. It's not fighting the current. It moves with it, effortlessly gliding along the surface, occasionally dipping under, but always flowing. It's when we try to paddle against the current of life, to manipulate every detail, that we find ourselves exhausted, stuck, and frustrated. The beauty of the leaf is that it knows no other way but to surrender. And somehow, it gets exactly where it needs to go. We often believe that change must be hard work, that growth comes only from struggle and sacrifice. We've been taught that without a constant push, we'll stagnate. But the irony is, real change often comes from surrender. The moment you stop seeing something as an immovable obstacle, the moment you stop fighting it, the thing that seemed so solid, so real, starts to dissolve. Imagine standing in front of a mirror. You can spend hours analyzing every flaw, trying different angles to catch your best side. You might even adjust the lighting, hoping it will soften the edges of your insecurities. But the more you focus on those imperfections, the more magnified they become. What if, instead of obsessing over the image staring back at you, you stepped back? What if you remembered that the mirror is only reflecting a fraction of who you are? The funny thing about mirrors is that they're limited. They can only show us what's on the outside. But real change, the kind that transforms lives, begins within. When you stop trying to fix every little thing about yourself, when you stop defining yourself by the reflection you see, that's when something magical happens. The energy you were using to control your image is suddenly free to flow into creativity, into connection, into joy. There's a story I once heard about a man who spent years training to climb a mountain. He practiced every day, studying the terrain, preparing for the harsh conditions, and pushing his body to its limits. But no matter how much he trained, something always seemed to go wrong when he attempted the climb. Either the weather would turn, or he'd fall ill, or some other unexpected challenge would arise. After years of frustration, he gave up. He stopped trying to reach the summit, deciding instead to take leisurely walks around the base of the mountain, simply enjoying the beauty of the land. And then, one day, without even realizing it, he found himself on a path that led him halfway up the mountain. He hadn't planned it. He wasn't even aiming for it. He was just walking, enjoying the day. The summit no longer felt like something he had to conquer. It was simply there, a part of the journey. And as he continued walking, step by step, he eventually reached the top. It wasn't hard work that got him there, but rather a letting go of the need to control the outcome. In life, the more we chase after something, the more we're signaling to ourselves that it's separate from us, that it's out of reach. But when we relax and let go of the outcome, we often find that what we've been seeking was never far away. It was right there, within us all along. We are conditioned to believe that the world outside us is fixed and unchangeable, and that our role is to figure out how to navigate it, to alter it to suit our needs. But what if the world is not as solid as it seems? What if everything we experience is filtered through our own perception, and by changing that perception, we change the world? Take, for instance, a moment of anger. Maybe you're stuck in traffic, late for an important meeting. The frustration builds as each car seems to move slower than the last. Your mind races with thoughts of missed opportunities, of being judged for your tardiness. In that moment, the traffic feels like an immovable object, a force working against you. But what if you could step back? What if, instead of reacting, you paused and simply observed? What if you allowed yourself to see the situation differently, not as a personal affront, but as just another part of the day? By letting go of the need to change the situation, by accepting it as it is, you'll notice something interesting happens. The anger dissipates. The traffic is still there, but it no longer holds power over you. You can breathe. You can relax. And in that space, solutions often arise. Maybe you'll make a phone call to reschedule, or maybe you'll use the time to listen to a podcast you've been meaning to check out. The situation hasn't changed, but your experience of it has. So, what if we approached life with this same sense of detachment? Not a cold, indifferent detachment, but a loving, open-hearted one. What if we allowed ourselves to flow with the currents of life, trusting that we are exactly where we need to be? That the universe, or whatever you choose to call it, is not something we have to fight against, but something that's working with us, through us. When we stop trying to change everything, we find that change happens naturally. Imagine you're walking through a dense forest, and suddenly you come across a vine entangled around a tree. The vine has twisted and wound itself so tightly that it's now part of the tree itself. It's almost impossible to tell where the vine ends and the tree begins. This is how many of us live our lives, tangled, twisted, and deeply intertwined with the things we believe define us: our jobs, our relationships, our roles. We think that without them, we wouldn't know who we are. But what if, instead of clinging to these external identities, we let go? What if we allowed ourselves to unravel? Let's consider relationships, for example. How often do we think that love means attachment? We're taught from a young age that love is about holding on tight, about making someone else our world, and that we're supposed to feel incomplete without them. But that kind of love is suffocating, like the vine wrapped around the tree. It can't breathe, it can't grow freely, and eventually, it starts to choke the very thing it's trying to cling to. True love, like true growth, comes from space. From giving yourself and the other person the freedom to be who they are without trying to control or fix them. Have you ever seen two birds flying together? They're not tied to one another by strings. They're not controlling each other's flight paths. Instead, they move with their own rhythm, their own direction, yet still manage to fly side by side. That's the beauty of freedom in love. When you let someone be who they are, without trying to change or bind them, you're giving them the greatest gift. And in doing so, you experience the purest form of love, because it's no longer about needing them to complete you. It's about sharing your journey together without losing your own flight. In a similar way, when we stop trying to control every aspect of our lives, our careers, our success, our image, we start to experience real ownership over our lives. It's a paradox, isn't it? The more you try to grip something tightly, the more it slips through your fingers. Like holding sand in your hand, the harder you squeeze, the quicker it falls away. But when you relax your hand, the sand stays. True mastery, true ownership, comes not from controlling, but from allowing. Think about a balloon. When it's inflated, the air inside is trapped, confined to the shape of the balloon. It's tense, it's stretched, and one little prick from a sharp object can cause it to burst. But once the balloon pops, the air is free. It merges with the entire atmosphere, no longer confined to a small space, no longer vulnerable to the sharp edges of life. When we live with the mindset of needing to control every outcome, every challenge in our lives feels like a cactus, ready to pop our balloon at any moment. But when we let go, When we stop identifying with the balloon and realize we are the air inside, we become limitless. We can flow through any situation, any challenge without fear of being punctured. Take a moment and think about something in your life that feels like it's real. A struggle you're dealing with, a presentation you're nervous about, a deadline that's looming over you. These things seem so concrete, like rocks in your path. They feel heavy and immovable, and they make your stomach tighten with anxiety. But what if you redefined them? What if instead of seeing them as fixed realities, you saw them as thoughts, just fleeting ideas passing through your awareness? Imagine you're preparing for a big presentation. You've been stressed for weeks, rehearsing, worrying about what might go wrong. It feels like this presentation will determine everything: your career, your future, your worth. But what if you stepped back and saw this presentation not as a life or death event, but as just another thought in the stream of your awareness? It's like a cloud passing through the sky. It has shape and form, but it's not solid. It's not the sky itself. And you are the sky. You are the vast, open awareness that watches the clouds come and go. They might block the sun for a while, but they always pass. When you begin to see the challenges in your life as just thoughts, they lose their power. They no longer feel like immovable boulders, but rather like ripples on the surface of a lake. You don't have to believe this idea right away. You don't have to force yourself to accept it. Just try it as an experiment. The next time you feel overwhelmed by something, pause and remind yourself, this is just another thought appearing in my awareness. Think of it like this. You're watching a movie. You get so caught up in the story that you forget it's not real. You jump when the villain appears. You cry when the hero suffers. But deep down, you know it's just a film. The screen is real, but the images on it are not. They're projections. Life is like that. The screen is your awareness, and the events you experience are the movie. When you stop identifying with the movie and remember that you're the one watching it, everything changes. You can enjoy the story without being trapped by it. There's a story about a monk who was once asked how he remained so calm and centered in the face of life's challenges. His response was simple. I let go of my need to change the world, and the world changes on its own. At first, this might sound passive, like giving up. But it's not. It's about recognizing that the world doesn't need to be fixed, because the real work is inside you. When you shift your perception, when you stop trying to control every outcome, the world responds in kind. Problems that once seemed insurmountable suddenly dissolve. Situations that once caused you stress now seem manageable. So, let go. Let go of the need to control, to fix, to attach. Let go of the belief that you need to be responsible for everything, like air caught in a balloon, fearing the sharp edges of life. Pop the balloon. Allow yourself to expand beyond the confines of your worries and fears. Become the air. Become the sky. And in that vastness, in that freedom, you will find the deepest sense of well-being. It's not about doing more or being more. It's about allowing yourself to just be. And when you do that, when you rest in that natural state of awareness, you'll realize something extraordinary. Everything was perfect all along. You were never broken, never incomplete. You were always whole. You just had to let go of the balloon to see it.